A lot of new woodworkers buy wipe-on polyurethane because it promises to be easy to apply. And that's true, it is easy to apply. But more experienced woodworkers rarely buy this stuff. Not because they don't like wipe-on poly, but because they don't see a point of wasting their money paying for what is essentially regular polyurethane diluted with inexpensive mineral spirits. You can make this yourself for a lot less money. First, I'll tell you how to make it. Then I'll tell you why you might make it and how you might use it. Begin with a can of regular old polyurethane. Make sure it's an oil-based poly. The label on the can should tell you if it's oil or water-based, but you can also tell by the color. Oil-based poly has a translucent amber color, while water-based poly is white and more opaque like milk. You can thin water-based polyurethane and wipe it on, but you won't get the same results as with the oil-based finish. And one of the main selling points of water-based poly is how quickly it dries. But a thinned oil-based poly will dry very quickly as well. So I don't really see the point of the water-based wiping poly unless you absolutely cannot tolerate the fumes of an oil base. When you open the can, be sure to stir it well, especially if you're using a satin finish, which contains flatteners that have to be equally distributed throughout. Then immediately pour some in a container and add an equal amount of mineral spirits. It's that simple. You're looking for about a 50-50 mix. You don't have to measure it. The mix isn't critical, just judge by eye. This should make the poly thin enough to wipe on with a cloth or foam brush if you prefer, but not so thin that it will easily run. You may have noticed that I mix mine in a water bottle with a pull-up style sports cap. This makes it very easy to apply if you're not using a brush. Of course, a 50-50 mix is just a starting point. As you become more experienced with this finish, you may choose to customize it to suit your needs by adding more or less mineral spirits. And that brings us to the essential question: why wipe on a polyurethane? Straight from the can, polyurethane is kind of thick. It dries slowly, giving more time for dust to settle and get stuck in the finish, or for the finish to sag and run on the vertical surfaces. And it's not absorbed by the wood as quickly as thinner finish. A wipe-on poly can be applied in layers. You may begin with a 50-50 mix on bare wood to fill in the fine pores. Then, after a light sanding, you may use a mix that's been thinned by 2/3, applying very thin coats that will dry quickly before dust can settle and runs can develop. By applying many very thin coats of well-diluted poly, you can slowly build up a finish that is both durable and beautiful. Another method is to thin the poly even further, perhaps 75% mineral spirits. Then apply the first coat more liberally, then wet sand with 320 grit paper with the grain to create a thin slurry that will fill in the pores, and then buff with a finished dampened cloth and leave it to dry. How many coats of wipe-on poly should you apply? That depends on how much you've thinned it and how thickly you apply it. Thinner mixtures dry fast because it's mostly mineral spirits, which evaporates away, leaving very little of the polyurethane on the surface. Obviously, you would need many coats to build up enough actual poly to protect the wood. I suggest at least 3 to 5 coats of your 50-50 mix, more if you thin it further. Remember, both the drying time and the level of protection each coat provides depends on how much you dilute it and how thinly you apply it. Some apply a very diluted mixture in very thin coats that dry almost as quickly as you apply them. Others apply a 50-50 mixture in a slightly thicker coat, which dries in an hour or so. If the coats are very thin, you may not be able to sand much between them, or you risk removing what you just put on. You may instead buff with just a brown paper bag. But coats that are a 50-50 mix or thicker may be sanded with 400 or 600 grit once they're fully dry, and then the final coat buffed with a brown paper bag. Applying and building up a finish is a huge subject. There are waxes and shellacs and special mixtures that some folks just swear by. But if you want to keep things simple while achieving a durable, easy-to-apply finish, you might try homemade wipe-on poly. Check out the description below this video for more useful finishing tutorials. See you next time. MyWoodcutters.com is the sort of small business I like to support. Stefan is a great guy, and he can find you knives and cutters for almost any joiner, planer, shaper, or molding machine. And his are the best prices if you're planning to upgrade to a helical carbide cutter head. Please use the link below this video to check with him before you buy somewhere else. Some small businesses are just worth supporting. Wait, don't go yet. If you're new here, please subscribe and remember to ring the bell. I would really appreciate that. Give us a thumbs up, or better yet, leave us a comment. I always read them. And be sure to check out the latest issue of Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal. It's always packed with tips, tricks, and tutorials designed to make you a better woodworker.